name is Scott Morgan, and I will be your presenter for this session on effective evaluations. I'm super excited that everyone's here tonight. Super excited for those that are also going to be able to tune in on this at their convenience on recorded session. What we're going to be doing with this, and we're scheduled to do this for an hour. Not sure that we'll take the full hour. Let me share my screen here so that everyone's able to watch the slide deck here. Not sure we'll be on for the full hour. We will certainly do as long as it takes, though. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the presentation. And when we get done with the presentation, at that time, I'll open it up for any questions or feedback that you might have. We want to go ahead and hold on to the questions until then. I've got my screen right now is on a full screen view, so I'm not exactly able to see anything that's being typed in at the moment. So I think Muhammad is also on the call, so if you need to notify me, Muhammad, you can just shoot me a text message. So we'll go ahead and begin. We're going to talk about effective evaluations this evening. And the reason that I like to present sessions on evaluations is because it's really my passion point when it comes to Toastmasters. And it's one of those things that I think separates Toastmasters from other organizations. So as we get into this, and a little bit about my own background, I've been a Toastmaster now for going on 8 years. I've been a club officer. I've been a district officer. I've competed in all the contests from the area or from the club level all the way up to the district level in both international speech as well as evaluations. I was a district runner-up for evaluations, and then the following year I won it. So it's evaluations is fun for me. It's absolutely one of the biggest pluses for me as far as the Toastmasters program. We're going to talk more about that tonight. So as we get into this, the first question I want to ask you is, why do you do Toastmasters? Think about that for just a moment. What made you want to sign up for Toastmasters? A lot of folks want to join Toastmasters because they want to overcome nervousness. I found a study one time that said that 75% of U.S. Americans experience some kind of nervousness when it comes to public speaking. And then I like to tell them they're in good company, actually, because when it comes to professional speakers and people that do this full time, that's 75% of those folks experience some kind of nervousness too. So it's something that we're all used to. We all get a little nervous when it comes to public speaking. I know I still do. It's nervous energy. You sort of channel it and it turn it into a great performance, but we all get nervous. Some folks join Toastmasters because of their overall goals, their personal development. They want to become better speakers. And although the mission of Toastmasters and the tagline of Toastmasters is about leadership development, and we say that Toastmasters is where leaders are made, nowhere in the mission statement of Toastmasters does it talk about public speaking, but that's really what we're joining Toastmasters for, not only just for the leadership development, but mostly for public speaking and to become better communicators. So it's all about development. It's all about personal goals and overcoming that nervousness when it comes to getting up and giving a presentation in front of a crowd. Nobody, however, joins Toastmasters to get evaluated, and that's a big surprise for a lot of folks. And the aspect that we have with this organization and this program that says we're going to take your speeches, we're going to seek to make you better. And it's not just about making you better through repetition and having you get up week in or week out or however often your club meets and you want to be able to give a presentation, but it's about the evaluation. And that's where, again, I think where we really separate ourselves from other organizations or other programs or boot camps or other things that you can do that are certainly good programs for learning about public speaking, except that Toastmasters is the only program, at least that I'm familiar with, that's number one worldwide, but number two, meets at least 2 to 4 times a month and allows people multiple opportunities to develop their own public speaking. So no one joins Toastmasters to get evaluated, but it is a byproduct, and it's something that is deliberately there to help us to improve as speakers. I want to ask this question: what is an evaluation? A lot of folks, we think in terms of is it judgment, is it an opinion? What exactly is a speech evaluation? Well, if we were to turn to the dictionary for a definition, we would find that the word evaluate means to determine or fix the value of, or to determine the significance worth, or condition of, usually by careful appraisal and study. And I found that in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary online. Now, that's a very dry, very academic way of looking at an evaluation, right? We're not really, when it comes to one of our Toastmasters speeches, you know, we really don't look at things like fixing the value or determining the value per se, but we do definitely want to check the significance, the worth, maybe the condition. And notice those last words there that are utilized in that definition, usually by careful appraisal and study. So the only way in which we can really be effective with evaluations is through careful appraisal and study. We have to be mindful of the speeches that we're evaluating. We have to be mindful of the presenter. We have to be mindful of where they're at within their development within Toastmasters. So through careful appraisal and study of the speech, we're able to create very effective evaluations. So over the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is to go over what an evaluation, first of all, is not, because as I go through Toastmasters through the past 8 years, and I've been to several clubs, I've heard numerous evaluations, there are things that an evaluation just is not. And I think there's a confusion when it comes to maybe even experienced Toastmasters about this point. And sometimes it's a little cringeworthy because we can stray away from what an evaluation is. And for those that are brand new to Toastmasters or newer to Toastmasters, it's good to set the right habits early on. This is a big point for me. Next, we're going to look at what an evaluation is. What are we seeking to do as far as an evaluation? What are the objectives of an evaluation in general? Then we're going to move into the mechanics of a project speech evaluation, evaluating a speech out of one of our manuals, and then the mechanics of a contest or non-project speech. Because even though it seeks to accomplish a very similar end result, we tackle those a little bit different. So if you've got a pen or paper, I would invite you to take some notes. There are some things that I'm going to put up on the screen as we progress through this that might be of value to you to jot down, hopefully. And certainly if you have questions, please jot those down as we move along, and at the end of the presentation I will open it up for questions. So the first thing, or rather the next thing we're going to talk about, is what an evaluation is not. And again, I think that, you know, in our efforts to try to help our fellow Toastmasters out and to try to give great presentations, sometimes I think we lose sight of what the evaluation is for as far as its purpose, as far as what the end result is supposed to be. So I like to start out by talking about what an evaluation is not. So I've got 3 ideas about what an evaluation is not. The first idea is that an evaluation, it's not a DVR. Now, what does Scott mean by that? Well, he means this. A lot of times in speech evaluations, I will hear an evaluator, not enunciating all of a sudden, get up and literally recap the whole speech. They will play back, like a DVR, the contents of that speech. They'll tell us almost word for word at times what the speaker has just said. Now, that's okay. That's all well and good. However, that's not an evaluation. That's you giving us a replay of the speech. The challenge with that is that we were all there and we all heard the same speech. We don't need you to rock back everything that was said. Now, if there were specific examples or points that you want to bring out, well, that's okay. But I have heard literally word for word whole sentences and portions of speeches and nothing in terms of an evaluation being put together when it comes to this aspect. So please try to remember, a speech is not, or an evaluation is not a DVR. We're not there to play back. Everybody heard that same speech. It's also not a tag team effort. And I had to put these 2 guys on their shameless. I met these guys in the airport last summer in Dallas, 2 guys from the WWE, but they're one of the hottest tag teams out there now. When I talk about tag team approach, I literally have seen evaluators get up and they'll take a speech that was just given and then they'll want to expound on that speech. They'll want to expand on the content of that speech and to continue the thoughts of the speaker. Now, the challenge with that is, again, that's not an evaluation. All you're doing is elaborating or adding your own thoughts to that person's speech. And if that's the case, you know, they didn't tag you in to give more thoughts about their subject, about their talk. You know, if that's something you want to do, save that for one of your own speeches another time. So please don't do that. You're not a tag team act there. You are an evaluator. Third, as an evaluator, you are not there to give a scathing criticism. There's Judge Judy right there. And we all have heard Judge Judy. Probably most of us are familiar with Judge Judy. She's there, and she's really hardcore. She's hard-nosed, and you typically don't want to be in her courtroom, right? She's there. She gives these scathing criticisms. And the thing about it is when you're an evaluator, you're not there to give a scathing critique. You're not there to judge somebody. You're there to help them to learn. And there are 3 words I'd like you to write down here, and it's the word evaluate to elevate. Evaluate to elevate. The whole point of an evaluation is to elevate the skill of that particular Toastmaster to make them better at what they're doing. So again, we're not about being a DVR, rocking back everything that we just heard. We're not about a tag team. The speaker is not tagging the evaluator in to give more content. We're certainly not Judge Judy. All right? So those are the 3 things of what an evaluator is not. Next, I want to talk about what an evaluation is. What is the evaluation supposed to be about? Now, there are several thoughts to this, and I'll just kind of share with you my own 2 thoughts. And really and truly, I find the evaluation to be an opportunity to be 2 things. Number 1, I see the evaluation as an opportunity for you to be a coach. There's old Sean Payton. When we all as Saints fans love to see this again. We're there to help to be a coach, and by coach, we're there to help Toastmasters, whether they're inexperienced Toastmasters or even more experienced Toastmasters, to continue learning, sharing with them the different dynamics and the things that go into effective presentations, and to be a clear and competent communicator. That's a coach, showing them the plays, showing them the ideas that's going to make them more successful, helping them to just be the best speaker that they could possibly be. The second element to this is I like to think of old Zig Ziglar as a great guy. A lot of you probably remember old Zig. Zig Ziglar was the master motivator, and this guy could help you to find your own motivation. Of course, motivation is mostly intrinsic. It's mostly within, but I think a great motivator is going to help somebody to connect to that motivation. And I think that we as evaluators have a wonderful opportunity, and there's that word again, opportunity, and I want you to write that down too. We have the opportunity to help to encourage people in their speaking. It's very easy for folks to get into Toastmasters and to hear evaluations that are maybe more like that Judge Judy, or not effective, or they don't get engaged in the club, and then they go away. We want to motivate people. We want to encourage people so that, number 1, they'll get more out of the program, but number 2, hopefully they'll stick around longer, and they'll be a part of our program longer and all the great things that we do in Toastmasters. Okay? So it's really an opportunity to be a coach. It's also an opportunity to be a mentor. All right. So those are really kind of the things that an evaluation is. All right. It's all about coaching. It's all about mentoring or motivating. Next, we're going to talk about the mechanics of a project speech evaluation. We're going to look at two types of speeches. One is the project speech, which is a speech that you would get out of your either Competent Communicator Manual or Advanced Communication Manuals. We're also here in a few minutes also going to look at the mechanics of a contest or a non-project speech. So first, we're going to look at the mechanics of a project speech evaluation. And when it comes to this, there are really 3 highlights. 3 things that I think we need to look at when it comes to doing an effective project speech evaluation. Number 1 for that is you have to know, what is the project? What is the project? Now, there are many, many manuals for these speeches to come out of. We have the Competent Communicator Manual. We have over a dozen different Advanced Communicator Manuals. And then there's all the different manuals from the Successful Club series and High Performance Leadership, some of these others that we have at Toastmasters. So first of all, when you're an evaluator, you should have an understanding of what the project is. So we're talking from the perspective of using a speech manual book. And in this case, presently I'm looking at the Advanced Communicator book called The Professional Speaker. It's one of the manuals that I'm working through. And Project 1 in that book, should you ever get to that particular book, is called the Keynote Address. The keynote address or address. And so understanding what the project is basically understanding a few things about it. It's, what does this project have to, what's the objective? What is it trying to fulfill? And there are several different ways that you as an evaluator will be able to figure this out. Number 1, of course, the best way ideally is to have your understanding because you've read through the project, you've read the highlights of the project, you've read the narrative, you understand what's going on. If time is an issue and you really can't get to word by word and line by line in the project, then you can look at what's called the executive summary. Most of these projects are going to have an executive summary. It's just a little snapshot about what that project is trying to do and the objectives of that project. It'll also tell you how long that project is. So you should have an understanding of the speech project. What are the objectives? What are they trying to teach? What is that communicator trying to learn? Secondly, you want to know what the evaluation criteria is. And to the end of every single individual project, there is going to be an evaluation guide. The evaluation guide is going to have a series of questions that are geared to make sure that the speaker has fulfilled the objectives of that presentation. There might even be some notes to the evaluator there. And those are specific things that Toastmasters is asking you as the evaluator to pick up on, to be able to key in and to focus on for that particular presentation. Some examples, and I'm reading again out of the keynote address. I don't know why I keep pronouncing it that way. The evaluation guide for the keynote address. What did the speaker say and do to arouse audience interest following the introduction? And did the speaker communicate to the listeners that he or she was united with them by bonds of sympathy, common experience, and understanding? And as an evaluator, you're simply going to answer those questions. And if it asks for a little more detail, you can certainly flesh that out. But it's this whole idea of understanding what the questions are, not only what the objectives are, but also what the questions are and the evaluation criteria for that particular project, so you can give the best evaluation possible. Because after all, remember that each speech that you're evaluating, that's somebody who's learning, whether it's in their competent communicator or in an advanced communicator or other manual. We're all learning. We're all here to develop ourselves here in Toastmasters. So what is the evaluation criteria? And thirdly, what are some other points of feedback? You know, I don't want anybody to think that the criteria found in the evaluation guides are the only measure of evaluating a speech. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into just those criteria. What are some other things that we could do as far as feedback? You know, we know an effective presentation is more than just project criteria. What else did that speaker do really well? What were some points of improvement? Things really well. I really enjoyed your eye contact. You know, I really enjoyed how you structured your speech. I really enjoyed how you gestured or how you engaged the audience, or what were some things that we could do to improve it. So there's more to an evaluation that goes into the evaluation than just what you find printed on the page. There are also some other specific ways that we can phrase our evaluations. There are things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, make sure that, you know, when we're phrasing and when we're giving our evaluations, that we're doing it from our perspective. We're not giving it from the perspective of saying this is what the club thinks. This is our perspective. And the kind of ironic thing about an evaluation is that we're asking you to be objective about something that is almost purely subjective. And it's based on opinion. It's based on how we evaluate the effectiveness of a speech. So it's really our opinion. It's not the opinions of other folks. It's our opinion. We also want to make sure that we're not being too judgmental. We're not using critical phrases. We want to make sure that we're never using absolutes such as never or always. I really like when an evaluator uses descriptive language to express their reactions to a speech. You can say things like, I liked it when ... or I was confused about when you went this direction in the speech ... et cetera, et cetera. So there are different things that we can say and different points that we can highlight in terms of the evaluation. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So again, we're looking at, in terms of a speech evaluation, we're looking at what is the project, what are the evaluation criteria, and what are some other points of feedback that we might be able to get or might be able to give to the speaker. Next, we want to look at the mechanics of a contest or non-project speech evaluation, because not every speech that's going to be given is going to be for a project manual. And we have a phrase, those of us that have been around for a while would probably know this phrase, there's no such thing as a free speech. Don't give a free speech. And by a free speech, that means a speech not from a manual. You should always try to get credit for every single speech that you do in a manual. You want to take every opportunity. There's so much to work on in Toastmasters throughout your Toastmasters experience. You want to try to get credit for every little thing that you possibly can. But with that being said, sometimes somebody's going to come and give a speech that's not going to be a part of a manual. They might give a speech at an open house. They might give a speech at a contest. You might find yourself competing in the evaluations contest, and there's a right way and a better way to be able to do those evaluations. So when it comes to the mechanics of a contest or a non-project speech evaluation, I have a certain format that I follow because you don't have a particular script. You don't have an evaluation guide for their speech if they're going outside of a manual, or if they're doing it for a special occasion and you need to give the evaluation. So this is the format that I developed, and this is the format that I used when I competed in the evaluations contest. This is typically how I do evaluations that are not found in a book. And I call this the Magic T approach. The Magic T. I just made it up. There's no rhyme or reason to that other than it looks like a T or a cross, all right? So we've got this T, and you can feel free to draw this diagram in your notes if you'd like. This is how I coach other folks when I'm working one-on-one and mentoring folks in Toastmasters and evaluations. This is what I'm about to show you is what I show them. And the first thing I'll do is I'll draw this kind of crosshairs, this crosshair. And with that, it's going to create basically two different columns. So in one column, I'm going to put a big plus sign. The big plus sign is what I call the highlight reel. These are the things that the speaker is doing well with their speech, the things that are really standing out for them. Things like their mechanics, things like their structure, things like the word usage. If your club uses the word of the day, did they use the word of the day in their speech? What kind of body language? Did they have open, expressive body language, or were they a little closed off? Again, we're looking at the positives here, the highlight reels, their eye contact. The use of the stage is important too. Did they use the stage to move to different parts of their speaking area to accentuate different parts of their speech? What was their vocal variety? Did they just stay the same the whole way, or did they use that vocal variety? How was their pace? How was their pitch? How was their volume? And also the overall impact of that speech. What made that speech valuable to you? So these are all different ideas, what I call the highlight reel, and the highlight reel will go into that column. The second column, and you'll notice that I have a little arrow pointing up there, is what I call points of improvement. And you can put whatever symbols you want here. It's totally yours. I like to use an arrow pointing up or sometimes a check mark, but I like the arrow pointing up because it's helping me to remember this is how I'm going to help this person improve. These are the areas that when that coaching and that motivation comes in, this is where I want to see that person strive to improve. So where could they tighten up? Where could they maybe do better with their speech? And it really uses the same criteria as I mentioned, their mechanics, the structure, word usage, their body language, eye contact, vocal variety, the impact, etc. And so as you're listening to this speech, what you're doing here is you're going to take your notes, and I'm just very generically wrote comment there. But I'm listening for the highlight reel, so I'm going to jot down all my comments underneath the highlight reel as I hear them. And if this really involves active listening, but also doing really well with taking good notes as you're listening. And I'm also listening at the same time for the points of improvement. I'm jotting those ideas down. You'll see 4 there. You might have 4. You might have 2. You might only have 1. There are some speeches that are better than others and some speeches that might have a lot of room for improvement, and that's great. That's awesome. That's what we're going for here in Toastmasters. It's a learning lab, and that's one of the great things about Toastmasters that I enjoy too. So you're going through and you're placing your highlight reel, you're placing your points of improvement, but it doesn't quite end there. And I'm going to give you a specific format in delivering your evaluations off the cuff here in just a moment. Not off the cuff, but a non-project speech. But after you're done doing the your highlight reel and your points of improvement, you might also jot down a summary of some sort. And you might jot down somewhere underneath it or off to the side. And this is basically going to be the overall I think statement. You don't have to put it in those specific words, but this is how you're going to kind of put a bow on it. You're going to tie it all together, and you're going to make it pretty, and you're going to wrap it up. Okay? So those are the 3 primary components that I usually use when it comes to a contest. If I'm participating in an evaluation contest, or if I'm participating or evaluating a non-project speech. And by the way, you can also use this format And with the in addition to the project evaluation as well, if there's some other points that you want to make. Now, how do we actually give these evaluations? I've shared with you the things that you got to know about a project speech, and I've shared with you the things that you should know about a non-project speech evaluation and all the different components that go into that. But how should we give these evaluations? What's the most meaningful way? And you could get up and just kind of just spit out and just kind of tell them what you think in your evaluation when you get up for your 2 to 3 minutes. But maybe there's a little more of a format that you can use. And again, what I'm about to show you is what I teach others when I'm mentoring them and coaching them on evaluation skills. And I call this the sandwich method. It's a sandwich method. And when we talk about the sandwich method, I really just mean that specifically. It looks like a sandwich, okay? It looks like a yummy, tasty, delicious sandwich. It's got those nice tomatoes on there and everything else, and all those yummy fillings are bookended by the bread, top and the bottom. Now, when you think about the sandwich method, this is really the format that you're going to use to be able to present an evaluation, and this is how you present any evaluation. And this is based on human psychology. This is also based on good habits when it comes to giving evaluations in the quote real world. If you want to give an employee evaluation or an evaluation to a peer or any other evaluations you might give. So there's a 3-pronged approach when it comes to the sandwich method. We start out when we give an evaluation, and again, this is for whether it's a manual speech evaluation or a non-manual speech evaluation. Either way, this is the format we want to use to actually present the evaluation. Number one is we're going to start out with the highlight reel. That's how we're going to open this thing up. And the reason we start with the highlight reel instead of the points of improvement is really think about yourself. I mean, how open would you be as somebody who's going to be evaluated if somebody's coming at you with criticism, picking things apart, showing you how you can improve without first maybe tempering it with all the good things that you have going for your presentation or your skill set, right? So it's just human psychology. Let's open it up with the positive. Let's build people up. Again, Toastmasters is a learning lab, and it's supposed to be a positive learning experience for all of those that are involved. So we're going to open up with the highlight reel. That's the lower bread at the bottom there. Next, we're going to fill that in with the points of improvement. So we're going to drift it over to the points of improvement next. So after we've shared some of those highlights and those things that went really well, then we want to talk about where can they tighten up, the things that they can do to improve, whether it might be the rate of speech or their volume or their eye contact, the overuse of notes, or just anything that you as a speech evaluator notices about their speech that you think might help them to become better as a speaker. Those are all points of improvement. And again, remember some of those ideas that I shared with you about how to say it. We don't want to be accusatory. We don't want to use those absolutes. We want to make sure that we're sharing it from our point of view and our opinion. And to also make sure, and let me also point this out too, when it comes to those points of improvement, you're going to give different points of improvement in different ways for different folks, and it's really understanding where they are as a speaker. If there's somebody that's brand new to Toastmasters and they got up there and they're giving that presentation and they're super, super nervous and they're shaking and you know that they're nervous, and that's cool. That's okay, because that's a lot of us when we get up to give a speech, right? Well, we don't want to go out there and just completely lay it on them, right, with the points of improvement. There are certain ways we need to make sure we're phrasing things. We have other clubs that are called advanced clubs, people that have already earned their competent communicator, or folks that have been around a while. And we can be a little more critical. We can be a little more, we can dial in and be a little more micro when it comes to finding those points of improvement and really drill down. So again, knowing how experienced somebody is, you always want to be honest, and you want to give them the best evaluation possible because it's about development, but you want to also keep in mind their experience level. So you opened it with the highlight reel. We layered it in with the points of improvement. How are we going to finish this thing? What's that top bread there? Well, that's going to be closing with motivation or coaching, right? Again, you're Sean Payton, you're Zig Ziglar, you're a coach, you're a motivator. We want to make sure that we cap off that experience on a positive note. Maybe we might repeat some of the things that we mentioned in the highlight reel or that summary that I showed you at the bottom of the last slide. What are the things that really drives it home? You got to find, and sometimes you got to find the gold. Some speeches might be a little more rough than others, and that's okay. You got to find the gold. There's going to be a goal, some kind of gold that you can mine from just about anything. So find those points, drive it home, close it with some motivation and coaching. And I always love, especially if they're newer, reassure them, let them know how much you are really looking forward to hearing them speak again, and can't wait to get them up there. Because and I had this talk with some of the folks down at our newest club in Morgan City. We want to try to get folks up there and speaking as soon as possible. Darren LaCroix, who is a world champion of public speaking and came to visit with us a couple of years ago, told us that his motto was stage time, stage time, stage time. So we want to make sure people are getting up there and getting up there often. So close it out with some motivation and coaching. All right. So that's the sandwich approach. Open with the highlight reel, give the points of improvement, and then close with some motivation and coaching. Finally, what I want to talk about is just some overall objectives for evaluations. Two things to keep in mind, and this can also be utilized in the real world when it comes to evaluating maybe employees, and I mentioned this a minute ago. But there are two ideas here that we really want to be cognizant about. Number one, when it comes to criticism, and the words criticism and judgment take really kind of a negative connotation, but in and of themselves, they're really quite neutral. They're neutral until we give them a positive or a negative connotation. Positive judgment, negative judgment, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are two things that we want to look at when it comes to objectives in terms of the types of feedback that we're giving. Number one, again, you're not the Judge Judy. Boom. You don't want to give destructive feedback. Don't give destructive criticism. We're not here to tear anybody down. We're here to build people up. So again, we have to be aware of the words that we're using, our tone of voice, the things that we put into a speech, we also want to put into an evaluation. So rather than being destructive, what's the opposite of destructive? That's constructive, right? We want to build people up, and that's overall the point of Toastmasters. It's about being a learning lab. It's about personal and professional development. It's about giving them an experience that, and I think that Toastmasters is one of the greatest shows on earth. Unfortunately, it's the greatest secret that we have in our communities, and it shouldn't be. The greatest show on earth. We want people to be built up and to be motivated and inspired and encouraged to be the best that they can be. And we're not going to turn out, not everyone's going to turn out to be a Zig Ziglar or a Les Brown or Brendon Burchard or any of these other professional speakers that you might have heard of, or Jim Rohn. Not everyone's going to be like that, obviously, but we want to make them the best that they can be. And we're not going to do that through destructive criticism. We're going to do that through constructive criticism. We want to help people to feel good about what they are doing, to feel confident and comfortable in their environment. And that's just one of the great things about Toastmasters, is people feeling confident and comfortable in their environment, in their club. So as I go to wrap this up, I'm putting a high five right here. What I want everyone to do is to reach up and give their screen a little high five. The high five is that motivation, encouragement. I'm giving this to each and every one of you right now because you took the time out tonight on a Monday evening. You might have had some other things you could have done, but you chose to spend it here or on the replay. You chose to dial up this replay and to get educated a little bit more about evaluations and just some thoughts on what separates an evaluation from a really good evaluation. The fact of the matter is, folks, is that we have an amazing responsibility when it comes to being an evaluator. We have the opportunity to coach, to motivate, to inspire, and really to help keep that fire going for a lot of our members. Some folks get discouraged and they leave because they're not engaged, but they're also discouraged and leave because maybe they receive evaluations that just aren't positive and just aren't there to help them out. So we want to make sure we're always doing the right thing when it comes to evaluations. So from right here, I just want to say thank you very much to all of you for taking part in our study here tonight in this session on evaluations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over and I'm going to open it up for any questions that we might have. I see as I go back to looking at the screen, I see several. I'm going to hit the stop sharing my screen. So what I'd like to do is just open the floor up to some questions if anybody has them.
None.
Okay, going once.
Thank you, Scott. That's all I want to tell you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Y'all are awesome. I'll tell you what, Toastmasters is one of the greatest tools for personal and professional development out there. And I told the crew down in Morgan City, we're not normal. You know, people that are into personal development and professional development, we're just not normal. The reason for that is because we're not, you know, we're in that 20%, you know, and maybe even less of people that really get into personal development. So you guys are rock stars. I appreciate you.
Hey, Scott.
Yo.
Hey, this is Jason.
Hey, man.
Appreciate it, man. It was very informative. What I would like is, could you possibly give a brief example of maybe some hints on the actual deliverance of a effective speech evaluation? Just maybe a 30 seconds, a minute or so of a, you know, something like a real live example.
Sure. So if I was giving an evaluation, let's see. Let me grab one of my. I do actually have one of my books here that I can go from. Actually has a project in it. It's a great question. So if I was giving an evaluation out of the speaking to, let me see here, speaking to inform. And so what I might start out with the evaluation, and really going back to the whole idea of that magic T that I mentioned, I'll start out with it, and it's got some very specific questions. And I'll usually start out by talking about just real briefly about the project. And I'll say, for instance, you know, Jason today was giving his project number 1 out of the manual, Speaking to Inform. And this was the speech to inform that he did. One of the first questions that is asked of Jason's speech is, what made the speech interesting? And he used a personal example of something that he did in this vacation that he took a long time ago with his kids. And it's something that that we were able to connect with, I think, or at least myself, on a personal basis. It also asks, how effectively did the speech opening capture and hold the attention? He's really good with his eye contact, Jason. I think you're fantastic with that, and one of the keys to connecting with an audience is that eye contact. And also asking a question to engage the audience. I felt that was very effective. It also asks, how comfortable and familiar did the speaker appear to be with his or her material? I think, Jason, you were super comfortable, man. I could tell that you were loose. I could tell that you owned your speech. I could tell that you had spent some time developing and memorizing it. So I think that went very well for you. If I could give you a couple of points of improvement, however, just some things for me that I think would be useful to tighten that up. I think you want to use the space a little bit more. Sometimes we get pigeonholed into standing right behind the lectern. Don't be afraid to use that space. You can also use that to connect with your audience a little bit more. And I think a more powerful ending for me might have made this a more effective speech. See what I'm saying, Jason? So that's sort of how that might, and as I get down there with your club a little bit later on this month, you know, you'll hear some of that a little bit more often as well. Just an example.
Yeah, that was awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good question, man. So, anyone else? Let's see. Okay, so the question was. Go ahead.
Typing this question, Scott. As a general evaluator, evaluating the evaluators themselves,
mm-hmm.
How do you? With respect to like you say, to elevate, not to judge and be hardcore with especially with the beginners, right? How would the general evaluator correct the evaluators in that sense? And also, how can an evaluator point out to the speaker when they've exceeded their time?
All right, so to address the first part of that, as a general evaluator, I think first of all, you can certainly do certain evaluations within the context of the meeting. If there's something, when it comes to a general evaluation, you're really just kind of commenting on the flow of the meeting. Did we start on time? Did we end on time? How was our, did we have a lot of distractions? You can point out specifically for the evaluators, you did, so-and-so, Jason, you did a really good job picking up on certain nonverbal cues that I also noticed in that presentation. Or Scott, you did a fantastic job with going through that criteria in that speech manual, but also adding some other valuable content. So I think you can do that in terms of a general evaluator in giving that feedback to your evaluators for the meeting. I think if there's anything negative about an individual, you could possibly, I would address that maybe offline, maybe get with them after the meeting, although I'm not certain where there's where that might be an issue that would have to be addressed, I guess. But certainly you're giving that feedback about what they did really well as an evaluator. It's good to give that feedback, right? So that's my thoughts on the general evaluation. Does that kind of answer or can I answer what you were saying there? And then the second question you had, would you mind repeating that for me?
How would, I guess with respect to time, this may be an evaluator, just the evaluator, how would he tell the speaker about the importance of being on time, keeping it within the time frame?
Sure, good question. So one of the things that we got to remember is that all of every table topic, every speech, every evaluation, those three categories are timed, right? So the evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes, or table topics are 1 minute to 2. Speech links will vary a little bit based on project. They're typically 5 to 7 minutes, a little bit, here and there. So within that context, the speakers already, the speaker should already be informed as to how long they're taking through the use of either the lights or the flashcards for the length of the speech. If you notice that, or if you're evaluating a speech and you see that the speech went long, i.e. that red light turned on and that red light was just burning and blazing for several more minutes, that's certainly within the context of the evaluation to get, to say, hey, as a point of improvement, remember the arrow pointing up, as a point of improvement, you just want to remember that as speakers, Maria, we want to make sure that we're staying within a defined limit. And of course, the purpose of the time limits here in Toastmasters is to make sure that we're wrangling ourselves in so that we're not speaking on and on and on. A great example of that, I saw a guy, and I might have mentioned this, I can't remember if I mentioned this down at your group or not. There's a gentleman who, we know table topics aren't supposed to last longer than a couple minutes. There's a gentleman that did a table topic 10 minutes. It was a subject that set him off, and he just felt that he had to keep going, and that was a table topic, and that was something that could have been addressed in the general evaluation. Say we all need to be mindful of our prescribed times, but as a speaker, number one, you should already be familiar with the times because they're showing based on either a light or a card system, and number two, if there's an egregious overuse of time, if that red was up and a while, it's okay to bring that up in the evaluation.
Okay.
Yep. Greg's asking, for my thoughts, please, when giving the evaluation, do you address the speaker in first person and direct your attention directly to them individually, or address the audience and talk about the speaker in his or her speech? I myself, and I don't know that there's a right or wrong, I myself speak in the first person, and I look directly at that speaker, and the reason for that is because that evaluation is about them. The evaluation is not about me. The evaluation is not about the club. The evaluation is not about anybody else in the room but that speaker. So I'm going to direct my attention specifically to that speaker, and to the point. Now I might look at, I might do a little survey of the audience with my eyes as I'm talking, maybe once during that, if I'm making a point, I'm trying to connect with the audience there too. But as a general rule, I'm looking right at that speaker, because that evaluation, and this is something I didn't mention probably, that evaluation is about the speaker and that particular presentation. Okay, and also let me also point out, this is really easy to do. That evaluation is about that speech at that time. It's not about their speech they gave 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. and we're not bringing in other things. We might talk a little bit about just real briefly on their progression from a month or 2 months when they first started to where they are now. That's cool, but we are there to focus in on that speaker and that particular speech. So yes, that's my personal style, is I like to focus directly on the individual because that's for them. I hope that answers your question, Greg. All right, anybody else?
Hey, Scott, you do have there's a question from Greg.
Yeah, that was the one I just answered.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Maria.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, man. Yeah,
Okay.
that was, he's asking about who do you address in the evaluation, and again, my personal feeling is you address the speaker who just gave the speech. That's my style, pretty much 100% of the time.
Gotcha.
Thank you, man. Anyone else? All right. Didn't quite take the hour, went a little bit longer than originally thought, but hey, good conversation. I really appreciate those questions. By the way, if you'd like to email me any questions that you might have, I'll give you my email address at this time. It's thescottmorgan, THE, scottmorgan@gmail.com. Feel free to email me. You can also connect with me on Facebook. Just look for Scott Morgan. You can also find me through the Evangeline Toastmasters. That's my home club. And you can also find me on Instagram also at the Scott Morgan. Really appreciate y'all. Let me just give a quick plug for the district conference coming up. We got some really great world champions of public speaking that are going to be presenting, Ed Tate and Darren Tay. Fantastic. You don't want to miss those guys. And especially the contests that are coming up. Got a lot of great speakers there too. And for those that have never been to the conference, please try to go if you can. So again, from me to you, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time tonight. I hope this was informative. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any thoughts or feedback that you'd like to give to me, please do. You're not going to offend me. I'm always seeking to do better myself. Greg, no, go Baylor Bears. Greg's a Baylor fan. I say go Pokes. So, all right, guys. Thank you all so much. You all have a blessed evening, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.